Hi, welcome back to another craft vlog where I inevitably talk too much. So a while back I made some useless stuff, mostly for my siblings but also some prototypes for a prospective online shop, including some dewberry jewelry, a mango tart dish, and some mangosteen charms. Apparently dewberries are like a real fruit, like a blackberry, but these are not them. These are these disgusting biscuits that my little sister has been eating since she was literally in preschool, and now she's in college, so she's got a lot of that in her system, and I decided to just be an enabler at this point and make her some trinkets. I think she's gonna use these for earrings and a necklace maybe. I don't know how much her earlobes can take, but I made her some trinkets of her favorite biscuit that I cannot stand personally. So the first thing I had to do was kind of bake this biscuit, because right now you can see it's really pasty, uncooked color, and I needed to bake it to not a golden brown, which you would want a biscuit to look like, and not even like a buttery yellow, which you might want a biscuit to look like those Danish biscuits that come in the tin that eventually become replaced by sewing materials. These cookies have a very, I would say, jaundiced tone to them. My little sister, who does love them, calls them piss color. And when she was watching me paint these, she was just like, you gotta add more of that piss color. So I guess that's what this paint is called now, it's piss color. You think that because my little sister has eaten so many of these, that she would have a higher opinion, or at least a more favorable opinion of them, but no, she's always the first person to take shots at them. So now I moved on to making the red jam center, which I think is the highlight of these cookies. So my younger sister, she doesn't eat any fruit. Sometimes she can be provoked to eat an apple, especially if it's already cooked in an apple pie or apple crumble, but most of the quote-unquote smellier fruits, she won't dare touch them. And for some reason that I will never understand, strawberries and other berries tend to fall under that category. Like, I can't smell what they're smelling. But it must be pretty bad if they can't even come near to them. I don't know. Maybe it's a generational divide. Maybe it's because she's a digital native or whatever. But the center of these cookies is this red jam that's supposed to be strawberry. And listen, I've eaten many strawberries in my life. I've eaten good ones, bad ones, big ones, small ones, red ones, and green ones even, in desperate times. And this red jam in the center of this cookie has absolutely nothing to do with strawberries. It's an insult to even mention them in the same sentence, unless that sentence is this jam has nothing to do with strawberries. It's this red sticky substance that I think would be better off fixing roofs in the middle of a storm, or perhaps affixing something like some kind of epoxy, because that's what it feels like when it gets onto your teeth, and it doesn't seem to come off. And my little sister had braces for several years, and I don't know how she lived with this red gunk just getting all over the wires like weeds in a train track. But I guess that's devotion for you. She really loves this stuff. On the other hand, our eldest sibling absolutely loves fruits, especially mangoes, so I made them this mango tart dish, which I had to put under a very thick wash of yellow, because when the clay dried it had this grayish tinge that I just think made them look a little bit rotten. So I went in again with a darker shade of the yellow wash to put in between the mangoes so they would stick out from their background just a little bit more. But this whole step was actually effectively useless, because I just covered it up with other stuff later on, as you will see. But isn't that the artistic process, just doing a whole lot of stuff that have no real bearing on the final output? So the next thing that I did was my non-proprietary acrylic glazing method that I used to paint leaves. I've not figured it out for other things, but it works really well for leaves. And the way that it works is by something called additive and subtractive color mixing. So basically, there are two kinds of ways of mixing colors. This is like an quick optics lesson, because I miss being a science teacher. So in additive color mixing, it's what happens with colors from light sources. So you think like the LED strips in those aesthetic PC setups that streamers have. Like, if you look closely at the LED, it's actually just a mix of red, green, and blue light in different combinations to make everything in the rainbow. Whereas for things like pigments, like paints, they use subtractive color mixing. So that's kind of Like, it's just got a different formula. That's why something that looks nice in the computer screen, when you print it out, it looks like gray and ugly, because they just use different rules. And so the rules at the base of it is because light has 3 primary colors, which are red, green, and blue, while pigments have 3 primary colors that are cyan, magenta, and yellow. It's a CMY of CMYK. And they kind of work like rock, paper, scissors, or like Pokemon types, although I don't have any authority to speak on Pokemon types. I've never played a Pokemon game, but from what I understand, it's kind of the same thing. So this is how it is. Cyan pigments, they eat red light. Magenta pigments eat green light. And yellow pigments eat blue light. So when sunlight hits these leaf sculptures I made, it's a mixture of red, green, and blue light, because all of them together make white, or at least like plain sunlight. And then the yellow pigment of the underpainting, it eats the blue light, which lets the red and green escape back to your eyes, and they mix together to form yellow light, which is why you see it as yellow. But once I add the blue wash, so it's just a straight blue, it's not actually green. It's not quite cyan pigment, but it's actually a mix of cyan and magenta, so yeah. Blue is not just blue. I don't know how to explain that better. A good blue is not pure cyan. So actually this mix of cyan and magenta pigment, it has I would guess more cyan. So it eats more of the red light. So the equation, it kind of goes like this. So the sunlight comes in, it's red, green, and blue, and then it's gonna pass through that blue wash to get to the leaf sculpture itself. When it passes through the blue wash, which is a transparent layer of mostly cyan pigment, that pigment eats all the red light. So only blue and green light hit the yellow leaf, which in its turn eats much of the blue light. So mostly green light bounces back out through the blue wash to get to our eyes, tricking us into thinking these leaves are green when they're actually 2 distinct layers of color. And at this point I realized that the mangoes look a little bit underripe. I wanted them to look a little tastier, a little more gimaras flavor, so I basically spray tanned these mangoes with a warmer, more orangey mix of yellow. The next thing I did was also for cosmetic reasons, so I made this rich, warm kind of mahogany brown to cover up all the places where I accidentally painted some green and yellow onto the branches surrounding the mangoes. So my original plan was for this to look kind of like a woven basket, but it looks more like a Christmas wreath, so I just rolled with it and painted these a woodier and less rattan basket brown. Next, I took my favorite art tool of all time, which is a very, very cheap makeup brush, and I dry brushed on some brown to make this outside pastry just look a little bit more delectable, a little bit more edible, and less like what my younger sister would call piss yellow. Then, in true flip-flop nature of the way my brain works, I felt like the mangoes were suddenly too overripe. So maybe the way that orangey yellow sat in once it was dry was a bit too orangey yellow for me. So I added a little bit of the asim factor back. So I made this lemony kind of yellow and washed over the mangoes again to bring them back to an ideal ripeness. And in an act of wholly unprecedented narcissism, I signed the work as if my older sibling who would be receiving this mango tart dish would ever forget that I was the one who made it. I tried to add a little bit more highlight to the mangoes using some dry brushed white, yellowish off-white paint. And I decided at that point that Any more work would just ruin it, and it was time to stop. But I actually had a lot more left to paint because I had all those mangosteen charms. So using the same leaf glazing method, I started with the yellow underpainting for all of these leaf charms. As you can see, I also have the mangosteens over there, which I was like kind of more focused on the mangosteens being accurate, that I just made whatever for the leaves. So these leaves, they don't represent mangosteen leaves well. Mangosteen leaves have more of an oblong shape. They curl less because they're more of a waxy texture, being tropical leaves. And the reason why tropical leaves are waxier is because it's just so wet here that if the leaves were made of anything less waxy, they would just be soaked all the time. It would be terrible for them. Also, the shape of mangosteen leaves is more of an oblong that comes to a pointed apex. They can be quite broad and long, but not like this. After around 20 minutes of footage that I deleted for your benefit, I finally came up with an okay mauve color for the mangosteen's pericarp. So the pericarp is what you would call the rind of an orange or a lemon. It's that spongy bit that you don't eat. And in mangosteens, it has this really nice mauve, pinkish, purplish color because of pigments that are naturally occurring, and they're called anthocyanins, and I don't have the paint equivalent of that. It would be like me just buying purple paint like a normal person rather than trying to mix God's colors with my mortal hands. And anthocyanins are pretty interesting. They're this reddish purple pigment that can be found in everywhere for like acai berries and purple corn, black rice, red cabbage, and the like. And it's an antioxidant, which is why even though we don't eat the pith or like the pericarp of mangosteens, because I've tried and it tastes terrible, people put this into supplements, so they're basically like forcing people to eat it because it's an antioxidant. But then the thing is that not all antioxidants are the same. So there are antioxidants that actually do help your body kind of fight the oxidative processes, or like, you know, slow down aging and things like that. And those are what we call vitamins. So some of the vitamins, I think vitamins A, C, and E, these work as antioxidants in the body. So if you're taking these vitamins, then yeah, they'll help you. But for the pigment supplements, yes, they are antioxidants, but they're not the same antioxidants that your body like kind of expects to see or that will work well with your body. So they're antioxidants that work in a lab setting. If you have an oxidation process and you drop some of this pigment on it, it will slow it down. But as we know, the human body does not work like a lab setting. And once you swallow this health supplement, once it gets digested and that gets shoved into your bloodstream and it gets processed by your liver or whatever, it doesn't do the thing that you want it to do. So like, I'm not saying that all health supplements are wrong, because maybe like we just haven't figured out the studies into them. And I'm a huge advocate for studying traditional medicines, because I feel like our ancestors, they figured stuff out. They had thousands of years to trial and error. But, you know, just be wary of scammers. Okay, back to the art part of things. So I had a bit of a color quandary with the mangosteen skin. It's this very rich dark purple, but I kept getting muddy brownish colors when I was trying to mix red and blue. So I went the color layering route again. I've started first with this undercoat of the same blue that I used for the leaves, and then I went in with a darker wash of that purple that I made from mixing red and blue, so it's more red. And what it made was this very painterly this very painterly style, uneven watercolor kind of texture on the outer skin that I really liked. So I went and did that for all the rest of the mangosteens except for this first one. That was the muddy thing that I didn't like. The last thing I did for a bit of uncalled for realism was to make some sap that I brushed on the outside of the skin and a little bit on the white arrows, so like the fleshy part of the mangosteen on the inside, just to give it a little depth and a little bit more fun and color. Because I find that the sap of this fruit is really interesting. It's so neon, it's almost radioactive. Okay, no, the real final step I did was that I varnished them with a glossy varnish and a little bit of matte varnish for the biscuit parts or the tart or pastry parts, and I hung them out to dry for around a week, after which I took them down. And this is basically my quality assurance. When I take things off the strings, I just let them fall, and if they break, that's on them. They don't pass QA, and if they don't break, then good for them. The reason why I'm thinking about quality assurances at all is because I'm planning to maybe sell trinkets and charms, or maybe sell jewelry. So this is kind of me prototyping that. But I have zero business sense, and I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna end up giving these away. So if you want some, you can message me. For my friends, I'm sure you're the only ones watching this. I tried seeing what they would look like on actual earrings, so I just hung them on my hoop earrings, but then my camera wouldn't focus, so this is the best you're gonna get. But if you made it this far, anyway, thanks for watching, bye.